Now we're going to talk about those crazy kooks over at the GOP. They lost one of their favorites, one of our favorites, and as a comedian, one of my really, truly personal favorites. Michele Bachmann announced she's retiring, and she gave us this snappy video to tell us.
My good friends, after a great deal of thought and deliberation, I have decided next year I will not seek a 5th congressional term to represent the wonderful people of the 6th District of Minnesota. After serious consideration, I am confident that this is the right decision. Be assured, my decision was not in any way influenced by any concerns about my being reelected to Congress. I've always in the past defeated candidates who are capable, qualified, and well-funded. And I have every confidence that if I ran, I would again defeat the individual who I defeated last year. And rest assured, this decision was not impacted in any way by the recent inquiries into the activities of my former presidential campaign or my former presidential staff.
Yeah, right.
That's what we call Vaseline on the lens right there. That's a little trick they use to make you look sharp. That was the foggiest, overly tanned, stiff, stilted, awkward thing I've ever seen in my life. All right.
And was she hot?
Exactly.
Can I get 2 of those, please?
So, all right, she is stepping down. Of course, Michele Bachmann's a Tea Party favorite, so they're losing her. They lost Alan West, a couple of these other guys, which leads us to wonder what is the future of the GOP, and is that far-right fringe that we all talk about, is it on its way out? And Malcolm, that's my question to you. Is there a chance that the far right of this may be coming back to the center a little bit?
No, but one thing I feel bad that Michele Bachmann is leaving when she finally seemed to figure out which camera to look into. Mm-hmm. You know, because she's had trouble with that in the past. It took her 5 terms in Congress, and she finally got that, and now she's leaving.
She accomplished what she went there for,
yeah.
to learn how to go into the camera.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that this is more about the 2 things that she mentioned. You know, whenever you hear a Republican out there saying this is not about X and it's not about Y, you're like, oh, I guess it's about X and Y, because she clearly is afraid she was going to lose, and there's a cloud hanging over her. So I don't think this necessarily speaks much about the GOP in general, although I think a lot of people in the party are glad to see her go. People like Karl Rove are clearly, I don't, as an indicator for the party in general, I think this just has to do with her and her personal situation, and they have a solid bullpen of crazy people, coming up the rear and ready to replace her.
Although she does, rear, eh?
Could you explain that phrase, please?
We'll talk about her husband in a minute, but no, I think she's just but she is a unique and unusual person. We are sorry to see her go because she does provide. I mean, her fans love her, and we on the left love her. Although she is a dangerous person.
Her main rival, the one who almost beat her in the last election, once he found out that she was no longer going to seek election, he dropped out. He's like, mission accomplished, I'm done. So what you get is a replacement. You had like a firebrand, and now you just get someone you'll never hear about who votes the same way.
Yeah. But remember, she's not gone yet. I mean, we still get her till January 2015. So there's a good 18 months left of Michele Bachmann fun for everybody to still have. But I don't think that it means that that they're not going to provide plenty of fodder for comedians anyway. There's still a lot of crazy in that bullpen that as Malcolm said.
Well, dare I play the devil's advocate here for a moment, but do we owe Michele Bachmann some credit? Because as a woman, she got up during those GOP primaries and dealt with all of those lunatics, but they all basically were old white men, except for Herman Cain, who had his own set of issues, I suppose. So just as a woman, do you think she provides anything good for the feminist narrative or anything like that? Even if you completely disagree with her politics, she did do something, right?
Well, yeah, you could say that. I would congratulate her on stepping up to run for office, stepping up to try to be part of the governing of the country. I absolutely disagree with pretty much everything she's ever said in her entire life, except and. But and I'm quitting. I like that. Yeah. But as far as her being out there as an example to other women to say, hey, look, if she can run and she can make it, then more qualified women could also consider that something that would be a viable option for them as well. So so for that, you're right. I think that's something that she should be congratulated for and supported for stepping up.
Yeah, Brett, what do you think the net gain or loss recently for the Tea Party is? Because obviously this is a loss to them in a certain respect. This IRS thing seems to be a gain for them because it's going right to their base, into their wheelhouse. So are things actually looking good for them? Is that possible?
I just don't think that at any point a radical faction can really lose or gain that much, because it's always going to be there. Someone's going to step up to kind of fill in the gap. And right now, the IRS thing is something that a lot of people can identify with and pile onto outside of whether they're a Tea Party person, just because I don't think the IRS is the most well-liked institution in general. So I think that's a thing. And there are going to be people that pile on anyway. I think that her leaving, it's how much can one person coming or going push the needle in Congress? Because what's going to happen, the only time that any change happens in Congress is when there's an open seat, yes, but in this place, in most times when there's an open seat these days, the area has been so gerrymandered that it's going to ensure that the same party stays in power. And the only way you get like someone from another party to come in is when they're going to bridge the line and still vote along the lines of whoever is in that area anyway. So you get someone who's going to be, a Democrat in name only, if at all. But the only reason that you could have gotten a Democrat before is if you had someone who was that polarizing.
Yeah, Malcolm, you think it's a little presumptuous of us, maybe as people on the progressive side of things, to sit here and say, well, Michele Bachmann's going, it's all good. Like, what if you were on the other side of this? What would you be thinking right now?
Well, I think that the dynamic within the Republican Party remains the same. And what Brett was talking about with the IRS scandal is right on, which is that the only sort of cohesive factor within the Republican Party right now is their hatred of Barack Obama and trying to stop him. And so the scandals, the IRS scandal, the AP, more in the IRS, so they're focusing on that more, is something they can all rally around and they can all focus on because they don't have agreement on what we do about immigration, for example, or any number of other issues. They fight among themselves and they can't legislate. They have no legislative drive now that is with any focus, so they can just latch on to the next scandal, whatever the scandal is, and that's something they can all agree on. And we hate Obama, but that's not
policy.
That's not policy.
And that
exactly.
doesn't help the country.
But it
at all.
also, I think it doesn't do them any favors because they're crying wolf so much that the rest of the country and the media is even starting to be like, because they were saying Benghazi was like the worst thing that ever happened. It was worse than 9/11 and Pearl Harbor and the Civil War 1,000 times combined. And now they're like, oh, Benghazi, what was that about? Okay, we're too busy with the IRS now. So maybe the public is getting a sense of, maybe you don't actually care that much about these scandals, but that you're just actually trying to hurt Obama. That's the sense I'm getting. What do you think? You think maybe it's just about getting to Obama?
I don't know if the public is catching on yet, because remember, it seemed like the public was going to catch on after the 2008 election, and then suddenly, boom, 2010, you put enough money and enough agitation from Tea Partiers into the campaign, then you get Republicans surging back into force in 2010. So what I see it as being a problem, though, is that with a determined crazy faction that sort of owns the Republican Party right now, we're not able to get anything done. So in order to get anything done in Congress, Democrats have to move further to the right to find more things that they can get a couple of Republicans to agree on. So that means that the crazy time is actually doing a really great job of pulling the country in the direction that the crazies want to go in anyway.
Yeah, it's just so hard to say. I mean, as much as you want to say that this Michele Bachmann resigning or any individual instance is the death knell of the Republican Party, you just can't say that when they have the House. Yeah. You just can't. Right. You can't say that Democrats are winning when they don't have the entire government.
Yeah.
I mean, look at healthcare reform. Healthcare reform passed, but it passed with pretty much all Republican ideas, what were originally Republican ideas. Banking reform, passed with Republicans watering it down, and now kind of preventing it from being implemented at all.